Moving out of input devices, we're now going to talk about output devices. These send processes and data out of a computer. Output devices make soft copies and hard copies. Soft copies are pretty much anything that you cannot touch. In other words, your video, your sound, and control signals. Hard copy is like a piece of paper coming out of a printer. Two of the main types of monitors are CRT, or cathode ray tubes, and LCD, which are liquid crystal displays. Cathode ray tubes are generally less expensive, but they use up much more space, use more energy. At a time, they offered better viewing angles. Liquid crystal display generally were more expensive, but they used far less energy and used far less space. And when they first came out, they weren't that viewable unless you were looking at them straight on. Main things to look at on monitors. Screens are grids made up of millions of pixels. LCDs are liquid crystals sandwiched between two transparent layers to form an image. As opposed to a cathode ray tube, pixels are illuminated by electron beam that passes back and forth across the screen. Some major factors to look at when you're buying an LCD is the resolution. The resolution is basically how many horizontal pixels by how many vertical pixels. The best way to look at this is, the higher the number, the better resolution you're going to get. Passive versus active matrix display. A passive display, it will let the electrons charge only a group of the pixels, as opposed to active matrix display, which will actually charge each pixel individually in an LCD screen. So an active matrix display is going to give you a much sharper, more clear angle. Again, back when LCDs first came out, the viewing angles were extremely important. You would not be able to view an LCD that well from the top, bottom, left, or right. You had to be looking directly onto it. Contrast ratio is also very important. That determines how dark the darks are and how bright the brights are. The higher the contrast ratio, the better. The brightness, or the luminescence, of the screen is also important. Some LCDs just don't have that strong of an output and just don't give you that strong of a brightness. The response time of the LCD screen is also important. For your gamers out there, the response time is basically how fast the pixels on the screen are willing to change. When you're comparing an LCD versus a cathode ray tube, the main things that you notice are LCDs take up far less space, they're generally going to produce a brighter image, they cause less eye strain, use less energy, and weigh less. Back when this was actually a serious decision when picking out monitors, cathode ray tubes used to offer a lot more high resolutions than LCDs. That's no longer true. They also used to be able to produce better quality and color. That also is no longer true. Other forms of video output include touchscreen monitors. These work both as input and output devices. Also, as you've seen in many classrooms, are data projectors. These project a computer image onto a large screen for sharing with large groups. Another output device are your printers. The two main types of printers are your impact printers and your non-impact printers. An impact printer, the most common one, is the dot matrix. Non-impact printers are basically your inkjet and laser printers. These are the most widespread printers used today. There's also specialty printers. These include multifunction printers that will allow you to be a scanner, fax machine, and printer all in one, a plotter, and a thermal printer. Non-impact printers, the two main types, are inkjet and laser. Inkjet is generally a less expensive device. They can print really high color and make really cost-effective images when you buy the right paper and buy a quality printer. Lasers are generally a more expensive device, but they have a much faster printing speed, and they also are very cheap when it comes to printing pages out in black and white. Color lasers used to be very expensive, but are really starting to come down in price. When you're choosing a printer, you really want to take a look at the PPM, or the pages per minute. That is the speed that your pages are going to be printing out. Your resolution, or your DPI, your dots per inch, the higher that number is, the better picture you're going to get. The color output, in other words, is it putting out an RGB, a red, green, blue, or is it putting out a CMYK, a cyan, magenta, yellow, or black? What kind of memory is actually in the printer? If there's actually some dedicated memory inside of the printer, that generally helps printing. What are you actually using it for, and do you actually need it? You need to basically weigh your wants versus your need. If you're at your house, chances are you do not need a laser printer. Also, the cost of consumables. The two main forms of outputting sound are headphones and speakers. The system unit. This is the box that contains all the electrical components of the computer. Your CPU, your RAM, your motherboard, the expansion cards, the power supply, and all the storage devices. On the front panel of most computers is your power button. Also, your drive bays, such as your DVD drive, your CD drive, and possibly a memory card reader. There's also productivity ports, such as FireWire, USB, and sometimes headphone and microphone jacks. The power button turns the system on. You should not use this to turn the computer off unless all else has failed. The best way to turn your computer off is just putting it into sleep mode, hibernation, or now on Windows Vista, there's what is known as a warm boot. Your drive bays have two main categories, your internal drive bays and your external drive bays. Your internal drive bays cannot be accessed from outside the computer. These are reserved for internal hard drives. Your external drive bays can be accessed from outside the computer, such as your CD and DVD drives, your floppy and zip disks. Your hard disk is your permanent, non-volatile storage. In other words, your data that you save on your hard drive will always be on it unless there's a major hardware malfunction. There's two versions, an internal and an external. The one on the left is the internal that generally is inside of your computer. Your external generally connects with a USB cord or a FireWire. Flash drives and flash memory. Flash drives, also known as jump drives, are the newest storage alternative. They plug into your USB port and flash memory cards slide into slots on the system. Generally, your flash memory cards are used also in your cameras and other portable data devices. We're going to talk about some storage media capabilities. The main way to store data on your computer is your hard drive. This can both be read on and written onto. Externals can actually go up to about 2 terabytes. Internals, it's rare to find one above 1 terabyte. Your CD drive can generally only be used to read data. Unless your CD says CDR or CDRW, it is only a reading device. If it says CDRW, that means it can both be read and written on. CDRs can be written on once. CDRWs can be written on several times. They hold about 700 megabytes worth of data. The same is true about DVDs. If it just says DVD, it is a read-only device. If it says DVD plus or minus R or RW, it can both be read on and written on. Most DVDs hold 4.7 gigabytes of information. There's also a newer technology that's called a dual-layer DVD, which holds 9.4 gigabytes of information. Most Blu-rays are just players, but now they have Blu-ray burners. These are initialed BD. These can both be read and written on. They hold 27 gigabytes on a single-layer disc. On a dual-layer disc, 50 gigabytes. Flash cards can both be read and written onto. They go from anywhere from 16 megabytes now up to 16 gigabytes. The flash drive can be as little as 16 megabytes as well and go all the way up to 16 gigabytes. They obviously can both be read and written onto. On the back of your computer, there's many ports for different peripherals. There are a couple different types of ports I want to discuss with you. There's the serial and parallel ports. Both of these are pretty much an archaic technology. They're pretty much being also phased out of most computers you would buy today. The serial port was a data port that was used for old cameras and older devices. The parallel port used to be able to connect a printer or a computer to a zip drive. Neither of these ports are really used in current day. They've been replaced by the much faster USB port, or Universal Serial Bus. There's also audio and video ports. Your audio ports are generally your pink, green, and blue ports on the back of the computer. There's also the video ports that can be either your DVI, which is your square-looking one on the left, or the classic VGA port, which is on your right. Also, many computers today are now coming with an HDMI port, which is not illustrated here.